Have you ever stopped to think that the story of an ordinary person can transform generations? My name is Gideon, and my journey isn't just about battles and victories. It's about faith, overcoming obstacles, and finding strength when there seems to be none. In times of oppression and scarcity, when everything around us seemed to be falling apart, I was called to do the impossible. It may sound like a distant tale, but my story touches on challenges that many of us still face today. Moments when faith wavers, when what we have seems too little, and when doubt surrounds us. Yes, I was afraid too. I had doubts, but it was in those weaknesses that I found a purpose I'd never imagined. And deep down, who among us hasn't wished for a chance to turn the tide, to face what seems insurmountable? What I went through is more than just a biblical account. It's proof that true triumph doesn't come from titles or powerful armies, but from a decision, a trust that's born in the soul and helps us see beyond. My story isn't just about me, it's about something bigger, something that reaches across generations and stirs up a question within us. What will we do when life throws challenges our way? Will we give in, or will we find the strength to move forward? I invite you to hear this story because maybe, just maybe, it could change yours too. Do you know the story of Gideon? A simple name, but one that carries a strength few can imagine. When Israel was under the cruel yoke of the Midianites, it felt like all was lost. The promised land had turned into a land of nightmares, and the Israelites felt their faith slipping away. It was as if, with each new dawn, hope faded while oppression grew heavier. Gideon saw firsthand the brutality of the invaders who left no crops or herds untouched, leaving behind devastation and scarcity. Have you ever felt trapped, with no way out? That was Israel's reality, and it stemmed from past mistakes, from sins that seemed to demand a high price. With each attack, the people watched as everything they had worked for was taken or destroyed by a relentless enemy. And it wasn't just the physical loss, it was the feeling of powerlessness, that feeling of fighting something way bigger than yourself. Gideon, one of the humblest, shared in this pain, witnessing suffering all around him. But he, like many of us during tough times, wondered how to keep faith in the middle of chaos. It wasn't just the land that was devastated. The people's hearts were breaking too, with despair threatening to consume every bit of hope. With every new blow, the cry for a miracle grew louder. Gideon, a simple man, felt the burden in his heart along with a restlessness he couldn't understand. It seemed almost foolish to hope for a way out. The enemy's army was huge, and the people had made so many mistakes. But amid it all, Gideon began to feel something different. A small awakening, a tiny seed of faith that refused to die. There was something there, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end. And this spark would soon lead him to an encounter that would change his life and his people's forever. Day after day, survival became harder for the Israelites. They lived in hiding, fearing the next invasion that would rob them of their crops and herds. Imagine planting, nurturing, waiting eagerly for the harvest, only to see it all destroyed in minutes, as if all your hard work meant nothing. It was a life of scarcity and vigilance, where even a daily meal was a struggle. Gideon saw it, felt it, and lived this reality. It was a life of pain and humiliation that seemed endless. In this silent fight for food and safety, people took refuge wherever they could, some even hiding in caves and makeshift shelters. Each piece of bread, each hidden animal, was a small victory against oppression, a reminder of dignity amidst the chaos. It was as if the land itself had become a battleground, where the enemy wasn't just flesh and blood, but also the constant fear of losing everything again. And when you live under that constant threat, faith becomes your invisible nourishment, the strength you hold on to so you don't give in to despair. Gideon, witnessing it all, knew that the situation demanded more than physical strength. It required a firm faith and courage. It wasn't just about surviving physically, but surviving with their spirit intact, something that felt harder to achieve every day. Each sacrifice, each choice to hide and protect their resources, was a choice for life. And in this challenging routine, one question echoed in Gideon's heart. Would God allow this suffering to go on forever? Without knowing it, this question would lead him to an encounter that would change Israel's fate. Then, on what seemed like an ordinary day, Gideon had an encounter he would never forget. While tending to his tasks, trying to survive like everyone else, a mysterious man appeared before him. This unexpected visitor greeted him as a mighty hero, which left Gideon stunned. He, who felt so small and powerless in the face of oppression, was being called to something far greater. This stranger saw something in Gideon that he himself couldn't see: a leader, a warrior, a man chosen to change his people's fate. Perplexed and somewhat doubtful, Gideon listened as the man's words seemed almost too incredible to believe. It was like someone telling you that despite all obstacles, you're the one who can break the chains and bring freedom to your people. What had seemed impossible now had a glimmer of hope. But even then, Gideon wondered, was he really the chosen one? Sometimes we're called to face challenges bigger than we can imagine, and the first step toward overcoming them is accepting that, even without all the resources or perfect abilities, there's something in us that can make a difference. And in that moment of uncertainty, Gideon realized that something much greater was at stake. The man before him was an angel, carrying a mission that depended on Gideon's answer. Yes, there was doubt, fear, but also a spark of faith. The kind that grows when you realize there's a purpose behind it all. Gideon was about to embark on a journey of overcoming obstacles, a journey that began with this unexpected call but would soon become a true test of his faith. Even after meeting the angel, Gideon's heart was still filled with insecurity. Was he really capable of leading Israel against such a powerful enemy? It's natural to have doubts when the task seems way bigger than you. Gideon, in his humility and need for certainty, asked God for a sign. He wanted confirmation, something to prove this mission wasn't just his imagination but a true calling. So, he made an unusual request that a fleece he laid out overnight would be soaked with dew, while the ground around it stayed dry. The next morning, seeing the fleece soaked while the ground was dry, Gideon felt his first flicker of confidence. But, just like many of us who need repeated signs to embrace a mission, he asked for one more sign, and God, in his patience, gave him the confirmation he needed, this time making the fleece dry while the ground was wet. This miracle became an anchor for Gideon's faith, a reminder that even in the face of terrifying challenges, he was not alone. For Gideon, these signs weren't just supernatural acts. They were proof that his faith was growing, that he was preparing for victory on the inside. It's common to need something tangible to convince us we're on the right path, especially when the journey looks unclear. So, with renewed conviction, Gideon set out, knowing that despite his limitations, God was with him. Little did he know the challenges that awaited him, but now he carried the certainty that this journey had a purpose. With his mission set, Gideon began gathering an army to face the Midianites. He called every able man, and many responded. After all, there was a deep desire for freedom in each of them. But God had other plans. Instead of relying on numbers, he wanted the victory to come from his intervention, not from the size of Gideon's army. Little by little, God instructed Gideon to reduce his troops, first by sending away those who were afraid, then by testing the men's alertness with a simple act of drinking water. And the improbable happened. From thousands, only 300 men remained. Imagine the doubt and anxiety Gideon must have felt, seeing his army reduced to such a small number. It was like walking into an arena with a handful of men against a massive crowd. But God wanted the glory of victory to be his, not human. This lesson reminds us that often, obstacles aren't overcome by the amount of resources we have, but by the quality of our faith and our willingness to stay strong. Gideon learned that when faith is real, small numbers can mean a lot. These 300 soldiers, chosen and prepared for greatness, were not just warriors. They were living symbols of divine power and victory. They embodied the idea that faith can move mountains, that a small light can pierce the deepest darkness. Gideon, now surrounded by these loyal men, knew he was ready for the battle, for he wasn't fighting alone. What he didn't yet know was the surprising way this small force would win against an army that seemed invincible. When the time for battle came, Gideon and his 300 men were ready, armed with unlikely weapons. Instead of swords and spears, they carried trumpets, torches hidden inside jars, and an unshakable belief in victory. As night fell, they took positions around the enemy camp. At Gideon's command, they broke the jars, lifted their torches, and blew their trumpets. The sound and sight of the lights threw the Midianites into a panic, and in the chaos, they turned on each other. What had seemed impossible became reality right before their eyes. Gideon knew their victory wouldn't come from weapons, but from strategy and faith. Just like in life, when what we have seems too little, the key was in how they used their resources. Trumpets and torches may seem small, but they became powerful tools in the hands of those who believed. Imagine a small group making an entire army retreat without direct combat. This battle was a living lesson that when trust is placed in faith and divine strategy, the improbable becomes possible. Watching the victory unfold, Gideon understood that God had fulfilled his promise. The oppression of the Midianites was over, and the people of Israel could finally experience freedom. These 300 men weren't just soldiers. They were symbols of overcoming obstacles and divine power. Their victory brought not only freedom, but a profound lesson on faith and courage, one that would echo in the hearts of the Israelites for generations. After the incredible victory over the Midianites, Gideon was welcomed as a hero. Naturally, many wanted to make him their ruler, to see him as the leader who would guide the nation in times of peace. But Gideon, with wisdom and humility, refused the offer. He knew that the victory and the peace that followed didn't come from his abilities or power, but from God's hand. His choice to decline the title of ruler was an act of devotion and a reminder to Israel that their true king was God himself. In times of success, staying humble keeps us from arrogance and reminds us where true strength comes from. With Gideon at the helm, Israel enjoyed 40 years of peace, a rare period of prosperity and stability. Harvests flourished, herds multiplied, and security reigned among the tribes. This peace wasn't just the absence of war, it was a new way of living, a time when the people could breathe without fear, thrive, and give thanks each day. This peace was the fruit not only of military victory, but of restored faith and unity among the people. It's like finding an inner peace after overcoming a personal struggle. For Israel, this time was proof that the greatest victory is the one that also strengthens the soul. Gideon's name became a symbol, not only as a warrior, but as a man who had the courage to lead, the wisdom to step back, and the faith to trust. He taught that the greatest feats happen when we put our trust in something greater than ourselves, and that true peace isn't built with force or titles, but with faith and devotion. Israel, now in peace, carried on Gideon's legacy of overcoming obstacles and faith, ready to move forward, knowing the spiritual journey was far from over. So, what will you do with everything you've learned here? Are you ready to apply these lessons of faith and overcoming obstacles in your own life? Life is full of challenges, but as Gideon showed, even the toughest battles can be won with courage, trust, and the ability to see beyond immediate struggles. Think about those times you felt small facing a problem, just like he did. Maybe all it takes to win is that decision to trust more, to give yourself to a greater purpose. Have you ever considered what God or the universe might be calling you to do? Sometimes the signs are all around us, waiting for us to make a decision. So why not make a commitment to yourself to push forward, even when the odds seem stacked against you? Remember, a life of purpose starts with a simple step of faith, just like Gideon took. I challenge you to see your own battles in this light and fight for what really matters. If this story inspired you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep learning about topics that can transform your life. The path of overcoming is ahead of you. The question is, are you ready to walk it?